PoE injectors can be really helpful devices if you have one PoE device in your home network that you would like to provide power to, or if you have a PoE device that isn't located near any of your other PoE devices. Assuming you've already selected the PoE injector to use in your home network, let's dive right into the steps you need to follow in order to get it up and running. In order to set up your PoE injector, there's a few things you need to have in place. First and foremost, you need an Ethernet cable that's going to be used to connect your injector and your PoE device. Because power is going to be traveling through this Ethernet cable to power on your PoE device, this Ethernet cable needs to be rated for use with PoE. If you're not sure what this means, no big deal, we'll go over this shortly. You also need another Ethernet cable, and this Ethernet cable is going to be used to connect your PoE injector and your router. Because this connection doesn't involve power over Ethernet, this Ethernet cable doesn't need to be rated for PoE. It can be, it won't make a difference, but in short, you basically just need at least one Ethernet cable that's rated for PoE, and then you need another Ethernet cable that's rated for PoE, or it doesn't have to be. You also need the PoE device that you're going to be powering on with your injector. I have a wireless access point. That's what we'll be using in our example today. You also need a power adapter because your injector needs to be connected to a power outlet. Here's the power adapter. It came with my injector. This is a reminder that your injector is serving as a power source for your PoE devices. So although your PoE devices don't need to be located near an outlet, your PoE injector does. That's why we need this power adapter. You obviously also need your PoE injector. This is a TP-Link Omada PoE 160S. If you have a different make and model of injector, that's not a big deal at all. Just about every injector is set up the same way, so if you have a different one, you can still follow along with these steps. And then lastly, what you obviously need an open power outlet somewhere because that's what your injector is going to be connected to. Before we get started with our setup, there's one other thing we should check, and it's that our PoE injector at least matches the PoE version of the PoE device that we're going to be powering on. What does this mean? In other words, it means if our PoE device is a PoE Plus device, that means our injector needs to be at least a PoE Plus rated injector. If this wireless injector was just rated for PoE, we would just need to make sure that this was a PoE rated injector. It could also be PoE Plus, PoE Plus Plus. All of these versions of PoE are backwards compatible, but you need to make sure that the injector at least matches the version that the PoE device requires. If you'd like to learn more about the different versions of PoE, I've previously made another video that breaks all of that down, so this will be crystal clear for you. With that out of the way and you confirming that your PoE injector is rated for the PoE version that at least matches your PoE device, we now want to start with our setup. The first thing we want to do, we want to provide power to our injector. So we take our adapter, we plug it into the only available port on the back of the device. We take the other end, and this obviously plugs into the open electrical outlet that you have nearby the location where you're going to be setting up the PoE injector. So let's do that now. With our injector plugged in, you'll start to see the power light indicator light up. The light is orange, and this is indicating to us that this injector is not currently providing PoE power to a PoE device. It indicates that the injector itself has power, it's just not providing PoE to another device. This is obviously because we haven't connected this to our PoE device yet. The next thing we need to do, we want to connect our router and our injector with an Ethernet cable. This can be the Ethernet cable that's not rated for PoE. And what you want to do, you want to connect one end to the back of your router in an open Ethernet port. My router is in another room, but to show you an example, these Ethernet ports here, most routers have 4 Ethernet ports. You want to select any one of these that are open, click one end of the Ethernet cable into one of these Ethernet ports. This is running back to my router, and then the other end, you want to connect to the Ethernet port that says data in. There are 2 ports here. One says data in, one says data out. You want to make sure that you connect it to the data in port because your injector will be receiving data from your router, and then it's going to be passing that data to your PoE device. That's why we use the data in port. So here we are, it's the port here on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, it'll be your right-hand side as well. We connect it here. So now we have our injector connected to our router. As you'll see, there's no change in the status indicator light. Again, that's because this device is not currently providing PoE power to a PoE device. Now the next thing we have left to do is to connect our PoE device and our PoE injector. There's only one port available, it's the data out port. To be specific, it's labeled power and data out. This is to show that from the injector to your PoE device, there's going to be both power and data that's passed through the Ethernet cable. Here's where we need to have a little bit of a discussion about the Ethernet cable you use to connect your injector and PoE device. This cable, because there's both power and data being passed through it, it needs to be rated for PoE. What this means, it essentially needs to be a category 5E or above Ethernet cable, and the wires inside the cable need to be made of all copper. You'll see with cheaper Ethernet cables, the wires inside Ethernet cables can be made of CCA or copper clad aluminum. This is not safe for the additional power that's used with PoE when you have both power and data being passed through the cable. That's why it's important to have copper wires inside this cable. I've made an entirely separate YouTube video detailing how to ensure that your Ethernet cables are rated for PoE. I would go and check that one out just to make sure that your Ethernet cable is safe to use with PoE, and then you can move forward with these connections. So what we need to do, we take one end of our Ethernet cable that's rated for PoE, we connect it to the only Ethernet port open on our injector. That's the data and power out outlet. We connect that there. The other end obviously connects to our PoE device. There's only one Ethernet port on our Wi-Fi access point, so we'll connect it here. And what you'll see shortly here is this device will start to show power with its status light. As you can see, obviously, this device isn't connected to the wall with a power outlet. The only cable connected to it is this Ethernet cable. This is the essence of power over Ethernet. You can obviously tell that things are working here, but if you need a confirmation, you can see the status light on the PoE injector is now green. That's because it has power and it's providing PoE to our PoE device. Here's where it's worth taking an extra minute, because if this PoE status light is not green, it will tell you if something's wrong. For example, if it's flashing, it might be because this PoE injector is not rated for the version of PoE that your PoE device requires. This is something we already made sure was in place, so it shouldn't be an issue for you. But if you see it, it could be either because of that, or your Ethernet cable connecting your injector and your PoE device might be too long, and you might have some power drop along the length of the cable. In these instances, you want to see if a shorter Ethernet cable that's rated for PoE will do the job, and check that status light and see if it turns green. You may need to check the owner's manual to see what the different status light indicators mean for your injector. Those might be different based upon the make and model that you have, but every owner's manual will break that down for you. With your PoE injector up and running, there's one last thing we should talk about, and it's the location of where you should put your PoE injector. Now, PoE injectors, they're not as complex as PoE switches. They're only powering on one PoE device, so therefore they don't get as hot. They're a lot more resilient, and they have a lot less requirements when it comes to PoE switches, but there are still a few things you should keep in mind. The device obviously needs to be located near a power outlet, and ideally it will be in open air where it gets some airflow over the device. Again, your PoE injector, it won't get too hot because it's only powering on one device, but still you want to make sure it doesn't get too hot and overheat. So if it's out in the open, it doesn't have things on top of it, you should be just fine. Also, my PoE injector came with mounting screws. So if you want, you can affix this PoE injector to the wall, so that way it ensures it gets open airflow, and it might be easier to deal with than if you just put it on the floor somewhere. When it comes to injectors, that's really all you have to worry about. If you can keep it in an open area so it gets proper airflow, maybe you mount it to the wall if it's easier for cable management. If you do those things, you shouldn't have any problems. Now that your injector is up and running, I'd love to see in the comments section what PoE device you're powering on with your injector and what version of PoE your PoE injector is. As always, thanks for checking out this episode from Network from Home, and we'll catch you on the next one.